Owls is every week, 7 to 10. Like Ben said, we have a demo. We're trying to do a demo every other night, and so it's more raucous. We'll just sit around and go to town on these innovators when they show us their act. But tomorrow is different because we're actually doing a fundraiser for the Uptown Entertainment Alliance. The folks trying to buy or set up theater in the Armory. So if you come, you'll actually be able to raise some money and participate in some cool technology. Aside from that, we are going strong on office hours. If you need advice on any part of the innovation process, check out officehours.wallstreetlabs.com. It is free, and we have some great anecdotes. We've done like 45 of them, and we haven't even really launched officially. So if you're a domain expert and want to offer your insight, let us know. If you need help, go to that site, look for your person, like Wilson, me, David Chapko, Ray, click a time that works for you, and you'll get a notification. Jesse, Indie Film Night?
Yeah, exciting. So it's March, I think March 5th, the first Thursday of every month, we magically transform into a space for a hub of, a vibrant hub of independent film. So March we have Amy Freer, a Philadelphia filmmaker from, I'm sorry, the name of her production company escapes me, but she wrote, directed, and starred in a short, about 20-some minute movie about a time traveler who's having commitment issues. All shot in downtown Philly, and looks beautiful. It really shows off the city. So that is that's March. In April, then we have the students from my advanced video production class facing off for a $100 gift card to see they've created a series of shorts for their project, so they will be showing those and then getting critical feedback, hopefully from esteemed judges too. And the audience will vote for their favorite, and they'll get a gift card. So.
Okay. And last week we had Shane.
Yep, Shane Daniels, a Westchester filmmaker with the Hamilton Chronicles.
Cool.
So.
What else? Any other announcements?
Did we mention our sponsors yet?
No. Sponsors, it's not just the people in this building that kind of make this shit move forward. It's the Chester County Economic Development Council, Fox Rothschild, a pretty awesome law firm that has our back across the spectrum of stuff that we do here. The Goshen Group partnered with us to launch Tech Jobs. The Goshen Group is a tech recruiting firm 2 blocks down. They're really, they're advocates of the people they work with, the careers and the companies they work with. It's been a great partnership. And through that, we've been doing, Jesse has been blogging about individual folks around here. I think we just posted something about Brandon Hilhert, you might know him, to give people insight into career trajectory and like opportunities in this area. We also started an internet show called Tech Tours because we were kind of doing them anyway, but we went to Cold Light Solutions, which is a big data company that just raised like 10 or 15 million last year, about 60 people, and we went there and we just walked around and interviewed people and we posted it. And you drive by a lot of these corporate parks and you have no idea what's in there. It could be the default answer is like insurance or something, right? But there's an amazing forward-looking big data predictive analytics company right down the street. So now more people know about that. So if you have a tech company and you want us to do tech tours, it's like, what's that MTV Cribs movie or show? It's kind of like that, where we show up and we like check your shit out and brag for you. Okay, let me get off the stage and turn it over to Lars, who's going to rock your world with some pharma stories of innovation, and I'm going to be schooled too, so thank you. Let's give him a round of applause.
I really appreciate you all coming here through the ice. You know, it's pretty treacherous out there, and I know the Requis team would have been here. One guy's broke his foot and then he got sick after that as well. That was Nigel Smart. They were in Smart Consulting, that's part of us. Denise is part of this business. She comes here a lot. I think Denise's sister as well. Yeah, and then another vital part of the business is the compounding pharmacist along the road. Mark Finley's there, but he has customers all the time, so he's got to be there. But it's this company, Requis Pharmaceuticals. So this is the Facebook page. So I'd like the number of likes to be up on 100 by the end of this talk, if possible. So like us as much as you can.
I can help with that.
Yeah, Requis Pharmaceuticals is a virtual company based at home address, but we're all over the place. And virtual companies are the way forward, as you know. So if I introduce myself, I'm the CEO and president, co-founder of Requis Pharmaceuticals. We founded it in June 2011. I suppose the founding of it, we had the ideas for a long time. You know, we're very interested in sleep, you know, because we had, partly because one of our children didn't sleep for 2.5 years, you know, so we had to find out new remedies for sleep. And it's an epidemic in the US, and it causes serious health problems. So, yeah, we founded the company in June 2011, filed the first patents, incorporated in September 2012. We're fully operational now, and I'll tell you more about it as we go along. So it's always interesting to see what people have got open on their computers. And so this is Requis Pharma homepage. And I want to introduce our team because they're really great. And they put in a lot of time, and they hear me nagging at them all the time. So, yeah. So you'll recognize Nigel. If you have anything to do with pharmaceuticals around Westchester, Nigel's a larger-than-life character. So that's Nigel. That's probably taken about 10 years ago, but he still looks a bit like it. Mark Pimley, compounding pharmacist. He's been a really excellent innovator in our company. Marie Johnson, she lives out in Mannheim now, but she has a 4-day-a-week job with a company based in Westchester. So she spends time with us. She's our board treasurer. Laurel Edelman is also in Westchester, business development director. We have a team of others who I'll introduce during the talk. So going on to the talk then. So where are we? So to introduce myself again, I'm a chemistry nerd really. But it's so long ago. I studied chemistry in Oxford in the late 70s. It's so long ago that the word nerd hadn't been invented then, you know. So, but I really, you know, I enjoy chemistry a lot, and I had an excellent chemistry teacher at school. So chemistry started everything. I took my first job at Glaxo. More about that in a minute. But what I found out was that actually I've got this long line of entrepreneurs on both sides of my family, going back several generations. And then I found it was very difficult to be entrepreneurial in large companies. And I'm sure lots of people who've been in large companies can understand that. And it's very hard for a large company to attract and to channel the entrepreneurial expertise of its people. Because you hire people with great ideas, and then someone tells them they can't do that. So anyway, just a quick summary. We're a new emerging product development company. I'm a neuroscientist, really. So I've been designing neuroscience drugs for the last 35 years. And the company is focusing on central nervous system disorders. Central nervous system is the brain, basically. The initial focus is sleep disorders. We're based in Westchester, and I also have an adjunct professorship down at Drexel. And Drexel have been really helpful to me. I teach innovation down at Drexel as well.
Broadly or in the pharmaceutical sciences?
Broadly. So there's an innovation group. Drexel is an amazing university. And I'm not being paid to say that, by the way. It is an amazing university because it works with all sorts of diverse cultures of people. So it doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, you fit in there, you know. And they have an amazing nanotechnology group, which is cutting edge, and lots of businesses spin out of Drexel. We didn't spin out Drexel, but Drexel have been extremely helpful to me in the time that we've had these ideas. Because I get access to library, databases, and groups of... Jim Barrett is my professor down there. He's the most brilliant guy, also a neuroscientist. So this is my brilliant career slide, okay? So these are the drugs I've designed over the years. And this one got onto the market, actually marketed by Cephalon in Westchester, now taken over by Teva. It was originally marketed by Abbott, but Frank Baldino licensed it into Cephalon. So it's an interesting story because I worked on it at Novo Nordisk in the mid-'80s in Denmark, and then it ended up here in Westchester. now sold by Teva. I worked on stroke for a long time. It's a crying shame that there is no treatment for stroke, and I feel really passionate about that. And I think drug number 2 could have made it, but companies reorganize, things happen. So drug number the treatment for Parkinson's disease, which made it into phase 2 clinical trials. And there's a backup candidate coming through from my old company, Vernalis. And that one, it's a cannabinoid compound. So these are cannabis-based compounds, close to rimonabant. So cannabis can provide beautiful drugs. And
That's a good quote.
yeah. I think it just needs. So my theory is it just needs people to collect tax office and do research. So you've got an NIH group that would be funded by some of the taxation of legalized cannabis, because it could be the position of tobacco 50 years ago. We don't know how harmful it is. We don't know what, because tobacco has benefits as well, believe it or not. It protects against Alzheimer's disease. So anyway, so I came to Westchester here in 2006. And within 6 months, my team had made 26401, which has just gone into clinical trials for cognition. So that means, in old age, when you start losing some brain faculties, like recognizing all sorts of things, this is a really good drug for cognition, I believe. So these are the companies: Glaxo UK, Novo Nordisk Denmark, Novo Nordisk sponsor NPR. They are a truly great company, to be honest. They're really fantastic. And Vernalis, that was my step into biotech. So after 18 years in big pharma, I went into biotech, Vernalis, Requis Pharmaceuticals, and Cephalon US, and now we started Requis as well. So I've had like 50% of my career in huge companies, which is quite difficult, and then 50% of my career in startups, which has its challenges as well. So some important quotes I'd like to just share with you. So I hope I'm doing well on this one. I think this is a really great quote. You only have one chance to make a first impression. And that's really important if you're talking to investors, anybody. Shake hands with them, make eye contact. I hope I'm doing that now. And then this is a great quote from a movie, Art School Confidential. So people think chemistry nerds are just chemistry nerds, but actually we're doing creative things. Those molecules on the previous slide were created with a vision, and they're beautiful. If you get an NMR spectrum of a molecule, it sounds really crazy, but it can be truly beautiful. You can put it up on the wall if you understand it. And so just read that, and I'll read it as well. So what do you think the artist thinks about? Do they think about fine wines or black tie affairs? No, they live for that narcotic moment of creative bliss, a moment that may come once in a decade or never at all. So the artist among you will understand that. You create the perfect picture, the best statue, the greatest line in a movie. But with chemistry too, we are doing creative things. We're making things that nobody has made before. Drugs that are patented and make it into the brain, for example, to cure diseases. Nobody has made those before. So it's a highly creative process. And that's the problem, that CEOs of big pharma companies think it's a machine, but it's a highly creative process. And I can tell you, if Einstein joined a pharmaceutical company these days, he'd be fired within 2 weeks, because he would be arguing with people, and that's just not allowed. Sorry, I'm being a bit cynical here. There's some great pharmaceutical companies out there, and they're fantastic at developing drugs. And I've been in them.
I just wanted to point out the use of narcotic in reference to pharmaceuticals.
Yes, that's absolutely true. No, but it's because when you sort of get high on ideas, your brain chemistry is changing. So peptides are being released in the brain, which de-stress you and make you happy. There's oxytocin as well. That's one of them. There's also peptides you get from exercise. So it's all. So my theory is everything's chemistry. And everything in your brain is chemistry. Neurotransmitters are chemistry. The stuff I showed you is chemistry. Narcotics are chemistry. Anyway. So this is also a really good one as well. And I've got to thank someone who's on a Facebook friend called Nancy Nordenson, who shared this with me. And it's our local hero, Walt Whitman. Have you learned lessons only of those who admire you, were tender with you and stood aside for you? Have you not learned great lessons from those who braced themselves against you and disputed the passage with you? So you might have a great idea, and someone says, don't do it, it's a waste of time. And that's a really good thing to hear, because then you've got to argue for it and think, why is this really a good idea? I think this is vital to entrepreneurism, And those brainstorming sessions that people have, where you're not meant to be judgmental about stuff, I don't think they really work because you need feedback all the time. So is there a malaise in the pharmaceutical industry? And I can tell you there is, because if you live in Westchester, this is where Wyeth first made the antibiotics around the Second World War. And it's a long story, but just over there, Wyeth created the first antibiotics. And so Westchester's been a hotbed. It was started in some store on Gay Street, I believe. So Westchester's been the center of the pharmaceutical industry. And we've had major companies around here. And it's a dynamic, wonderful industry. And it's science-based, it's exported, it's saved millions of lives. And we lead unhealthy lives. You know, the average American, you hear this, drives into work, parks in a basement, takes the elevator up, walks 300 steps a day, and eats high-fat foods, expects to live to 90. And so the pharmaceutical industry has created a situation where we can live longer, despite the fact we're not looking after ourselves generally. And I was told this when I finished my degree at Oxford. I applied for a position at University College London as a Pfizer guy, and Pfizer was in the UK then, and so it was a sponsored PhD from Pfizer, and he said to me, "You'll always have a job because people are always frightened of dying." So it's a fair point. Death is nature's way of telling you to slow down, as they say. But what's happened since then? This is what's happened since then, is that companies have integrated, and there are lots of people in Westchester who worked for Wyeth. And so Wyeth bought Pfizer. Sorry, Pfizer, I wish it had been that way around. Pfizer bought Wyeth. Pfizer bought a number of companies, and what happens to them is it's like there's been a neutron bomb going off, and a few years later, the buildings are empty, and there's tumbleweed blowing around the car park. And Pfizer had taken the assets, and Warner Lambert reverted to the University of Michigan, I believe. And so that's one way of doing business. I'm not criticizing Pfizer, because they're very successful. But it doesn't always help, because companies merge, and then a couple of years later, you've got a company the same size as one of the two that merged. And so last Thursday, I went to see the Flyers for the first time. Was anyone else there on Thursday night? So it was unlucky. It was 2-2, and then there was a shootout. But sometimes when you're in the industry, you invent a drug, and you feel like the goalkeeper at an ice hockey game, where people are hitting you with sticks, firing at you, because they don't understand it. It's like you have this idea, and then someone else wants to have your resources and your team, and you get companies like, it just happened at Lilly, where the 5-HT people say, you've got to fire all the muscarinic people, they're wasting resources, and it just goes on all the time. So it's a tough environment to really invent drugs. It's a difficult process. So the issues are, we're observing a general lack of innovation in the industry, and that's because the whole industry has been corporatized. I started in the industry in the early 80s, and then you could actually argue a case without being fired. But now if you go into the CEO and you say, look, research isn't functioning for these reasons, then you're out the door pretty quickly. And senior management can appear to be remote and may not understand inventions and research. And it's partly because MBAs are now running the industry, whereas scientists and people who knew about medicine were running the industry, and they understood how difficult it was to discover a drug. I mean, if it's easy, everyone would be doing it. But it's a 10-year process, and it takes 10 years to build it up, and then it can be destroyed in 10 minutes. I've got to hurry through these slides, but I don't want to take too much time. So R&D sites, people are looking to downsize a company. They're in a big room like this, and they put all the sites on the wall, and then they just cross out the ones that are not making money and close them down. And the R&D sites don't make money, but they are providing drugs for 10 years' time. And so we're now seeing the mistakes that were made 15 years ago coming out there. Stock markets have a very short attention span, so they're talking about nanosecond trading. If you're selling them a 10-year project, it's quite difficult for them to understand it. And so some companies do it really well. Biogen, Gilead, for example. I know those companies very well. but not all companies do it well. And motivation of scientists is not at a high level because they get getting beaten up like that goalkeeper in the ice hockey team. So the answer is to have entrepreneurs. And that's really, really important. And so I want to tell you the story of the stopwatch and calendar. And it's tied in with this next picture. So I used to row when I was in college, and that's actually me. 1970s hairstyle and all the rest, you know. Yeah, we all looked like that once, you know. So I used to row, and we had a coach who was kind of very outspoken. Well, I don't know what we'd been doing the night before, but he said to us something like, "Look, you guys are so slow. You don't need a stopwatch. You need a calendar." And it's a great line, you know. But there's two things about it. You know, the urgency of the stopwatch, the long-term view of the calendar, and maybe a 10-year calendar is important. And I think this is great. Because you learn a lot about teamwork in a rowing crew. So I mentioned I came from this long line of entrepreneurs. And it took me a while to find that out, you know, going into family history. And because of my name, actually, I'm genetically Norwegian, but grew up in the UK. And my grandfathers, so one grandfather was from the north of Norway, one was from the very south. And one started banks, insurance companies. He was a gentleman farmer above the Arctic Circle there in Harstad. I don't know if it's marked. And Kristiansand is the southern tip. My other grandfather with my name, Lars Knutsen, left there in 1919 as a ship owner. And he started businesses in Wales. So, and it goes further back. It's easier to be entrepreneurial in flexible, less autocratic organizations. And I must say, the great thing about the US is that entrepreneurs are valued, and organizations like this value the entrepreneurs. And so you get all this science behind entrepreneurism, like this flowchart here, which is just fantastic to have people stimulating thinking about the entrepreneurial process. And I should hand some books around. There's some great books about entrepreneurism. And there's some great books about decision making, decision science, which these are the books that have been really important to me. And I'll leave them on the table so you can have a look. Decision science. And this is about inventions and how we invent things. And it's a really great book. And this one, I'm not allowed to mention the name loudly, but you can probably see what it is. It's the no rule. If we're going out on YouTube, I don't want to mention the name, but it's a brilliant book about how to remove toxic people from an organization and to lower their power so they can't kill off all these inventions because they're jealous. You know, they want to be the people in the limelight. So come and have a look at these books. And then this is the classic. And I went on a Novo Nordisk management course. I think it was late 80s, early 90s, and it's The Power of Ethical Management. And you can still get it secondhand on Amazon. Brilliant book. So what can we do about this? This is the next question. You know, it's time for the industry. Healthy self-examination. Oh yeah, I should introduce this one as well. So I wrote an article, which I'll mention in a minute, which this came out in 2011. So I'll hand it round. And it was published in Drug Discovery today. It's something I felt I had to write after like 30-odd years in the industry. And it made the top 10 downloads in Drug Discovery today. So it hit an audience, definitely. And so the industry needs to have some self-examination, how you can optimize creativity, make some targeted changes. And that article is the one I'm referring to here. And I firmly believe this. If you watch birds in flocks, you know, it's never too late to start heading in the right direction. And it's hard for big companies because it's very hard for CEOs to say, look, what I've been doing for the last 5 years is wrong. And that generally doesn't happen. It's like turning an oil tank around sometimes. And this is where small companies are very nimble and good. So that's the article I just sent round and published in 2011. 30 years of observation behind it. And I've got to do number 2. I'm being asked to do number 2, the follow-up to it as well. So there's some quotes from it. And this is at the very start. And it's me talking in this paragraph. You know, one of the turning points in my career of drug discovery came when overhearing a dinner table conversation at a Gordon conference relating to drug research. And these conferences are a great place for scientists to interact that take place up in Colby Sawyer College, for example, up in New Hampshire. And they're beautiful places. So you go away, it's like a boot camp for research. And two former colleagues from a big pharma company were reflecting on the events of the previous year. One had left a secure big pharma company to go into a VC-financed biotech. And the big pharma guy said, surely you must be worried about your job. You've left a secure job. And the person said, I've been so abused by management in big pharma in the past that job security is no longer an issue for me. They'd rather step out of the non-entrepreneurial organization and be in a place where they can be entrepreneurial, which is an early-stage biotech. The question is whether you can fund those companies. So some of the consequences of all these changes for pharma, there's a general trend of a drop in R&D output. So, before this, there were many drugs being discovered per year, but you see, there's a downward trend. It has been rising recently because people are starting to look at rare diseases, and I think it's up to 50 for 2014. But you can see the crisis years in the middle here, which led to huge downsizings. And this is from Nature Reviews Drug Discovery. So the industry has lost more than 350,000. So I'd probably say this was calculated a couple of years ago. The downsizings have been happening. I think I mentioned in my write-up, New Jersey's been completely decimated, and that's a really good word to use. I remember being taught in school that teachers used the word decimated, and that's what it meant. And I said, oh, it's been divided by 10. So there's probably about 10%, but actually it's been totally wiped off the map, And so if there's 10% of it left, it's probably more than 10% of it left, but huge companies in New Jersey have closed down, and it's had enormous economic consequences. The companies have moved to Boston, they've moved to San Diego, San Francisco. There's some activity around Philadelphia, but they're trying to make new hubs around northern New Jersey, because major companies, Novartis, Hoffman La Roche, Johnson & Johnson, have pulled out. Yeah, this is the blockbuster model. So the blockbuster model of having huge drugs selling up to $13 billion a year in the case of a Pfizer drug. This is, the whole model's being questioned. And you got the wire-fired thing again. It's sad. It's sad for all those people, but it's the mistakes made 15, 20 years ago which we're now harvesting. And so I want to say is that there's a process of drug discovery. And I've usually been at these early stages here. Smart consulting. So Denise, you're more into the later phase and post-approval phases. But I've generally been in the early phases, but I put drugs through the pipeline and then sat on teams and following them moving through. So it's complicated, but you can say for an MBA at the top of a company, it looks like a process. So you can tick each box as you go along. And defining the process has been, you're nodding your head here. So, you can't define, if something's never been done before, you can't define when it's going to happen, So it's like saying, oh, well, Steve Jobs should have invented the iPod in the 80s, why didn't he? Because there had to be an alignment of planets for the iPod, iPhone, all those great products to come together. It almost needed him to leave the company in a huff and come back again all energized, I've read his biography, and so it looks like a process. And I've had even the CEOs of biotech companies will show visitors around, and they'll say, "Oh, this is where it starts becoming like a factory." Well, it's not. The scientists invent drugs; they've got to be left alone to do it. It's a hard process, and I'll tell you more about that. The financials, I won't go into all this, but the return on capital has been totally wrecked. So it fell to 7.2% in 2012. The first research site I worked on had a 40% return on capital. That was GlaxoWare. So that's why Glaxo wanted to put more and more money into it, because these drugs were coming out. But now, because of all the malaise, it's almost to the stage where it's cheaper to put the money in the bank than actually do research. So, and that's from Nature Reviews Drug Discovery. So these are authoritative sources. Pharma stock performance. So pharmaceuticals used to be the place you put your money. 20% compound growth, 85 to 2000. And look where it is between 2001 and 2007. It contracted. And then GSK, which is really big around Philadelphia, SmithKline. SmithKline had research sites out here, had that beautiful building in central Philly. That building's now empty. The company, it has kept some people up here in Philly, down by the Navy Yard, and that is a wonderful building, and they're doing a good job. But basically, since the merger of SmithKline and Glaxo, the stock has gone down. So, however you measure it, there have been horrible mistakes made along the way. And I think they're starting to sort of realize they may have done something wrong. So lots of things have become much more attractive to invest in. There's still some good companies. Biogen stock quadrupled in the last few years. Novo Nordisk went up 700% in the last 12 years. Gilead, I would say, is a fantastic stock. I've been there. I've given a talk similar to this at Gilead in 2013. So there's no insider information. I'm just saying they're wonderful. There are some good companies out there who've learned these lessons. So the key question is, how do we provide an atmosphere where inventions are likely to happen? And that's me on the beach down at Rehoboth, by the way. And you're much more likely to invent something when you're actually in a peaceful situation. And because your brain's still churning on from everything that happened in the previous week. And so if someone's holding a gun to your head, it doesn't happen. And so for inventions to be, not just to happen, but to be noticed, I mean, someone to say, actually, there's an invention here, it's really important. And Lyra's book, which is here. Most examples of extreme creativity happen where we're not looking for them. In the shower, when fishing, relaxing, on a walk. And, is it 3M, the company that allows people to have a day a week where they can just walk around and talk to whoever they want to, as long as they report on their thinkings and their ramblings. And there's some real truth about that. So, and things that don't, at first sight, aren't really there. So if you look at that picture, you think, oh, snow and rocks, but there's some horses standing there as well, if you look carefully. So what creativity is not. So if your boss says to you, look, invent it by next Tuesday, otherwise you're in trouble, mate. So, and, I took these just from movies. And, Bill Murray is one of my heroes. I think he's brilliant. He never asks he doesn't even have a phone, actually. So it's very hard to get hold of him. So the people who really want them in movies like Lost in Translation, they have to somehow get hold of him. And so he does all these eclectic movies. And I don't know if there's any Republicans here, so I'm not going to be rude about that. But some people might be quite relieved. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't. I've got to behave myself because I'm on YouTube, But anyway, staff can be threatened by things, project closure, negative consequences. We'll take away your team if you don't do it by next Tuesday. And we need we do need urgency. And Type A CEOs, they want it done quickly. And this is actually a quote from a Johnson & Johnson manager, and it was a site where they basically said, we bought you all the toys, guys, go away, give us the drugs or else. And then a few years later, they fired everybody, and they hired back half the group, the people that they liked. And then after a little while, they just fired everybody, So, and we hired people from there into Cephalon, so I know the stories that they came with, So that's the thing. It took them 10 years to build up research, destroyed it in 10 minutes. So, and this is a great quote too, Does anyone know this quote? Two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not so sure about the universe. So, and unfortunately, we do tend to repeat errors. Just the way we are as a human race. So I've told you about the crisis in the industry. I just want to spend a few minutes on Requis Pharmaceuticals. So this, what I believe is that the industry is torn apart. And there are some successful companies. I've mentioned Biogen, obviously Amgen. There are companies around Westchester that are successful. These are not investment tips, but Novo Nordisk were a truly amazing company. And the CEO, I quoted him in the article that's going around. He said some totally revolutionary things. And the company is well led, and they know what they're doing. And they they've had a compound growth rate of 15% per year, and just a terrific company. So when I went there in '86, Novo Nordisk were just 5,000 people, and Glaxo, which I went from, were like 35,000 people. And then Novo spun out some companies, some enzyme companies like Novozymes, but now they're bigger than Glaxo, and much bigger stock market value. So really, what's the problem? What if these drugs don't come forward, and what if they're killed before they make it into the market? And you get these political organizations where people just who are macho can just kill a drug. Someone might have been working on it for 5 years, investing $50 million, and they just say they don't like it. And so that's a problem. And then Small is Still Beautiful is that article. And so I believe that people-sized organizations are the best, and I can give you lots of stats on that. So what I mean by people-sized is, places where you can meet in one room and have your team there and talk to everybody, and people can interact, maybe watch movies on a Thursday night, and just and what I mean, I think about 400 is people-sized, where you can actually know everybody's names, and so I think those large companies, and Glaxo did try to do it. They tried to make SEDs, and it does work that you can get down to these smaller groups and leave them to get on with their stuff. Don't tell them what to do all the time. And certainly the spirit of drug discovery is still alive, but it needs special management. And we have a great opportunity in what I call de-risked Requis Pharma. So before I shift on to Requis, are there any questions about what I've said before or comments? Yep.
You said everything is chemistry earlier.
Yeah,
And
I did say that.
I really am interested in that because I'm an artist and I'm believing to take that even further, that everything is geometry.
Yeah.
Would you say that's true?
So if you talk to a physicist, they'd say everything's physics. Because it's all atoms, and atoms relate to each other. But chemistry is interesting because everything in this room is made of molecules, and the way they look is down to the structures of the molecules. And then organic chemistry is the chemistry of carbon. And so these are polysaccharides, so cellulose is a polysaccharide. So you've got the wood's made up of sugar molecules, and then bone is chemistry because it's got all sorts of structures. The human body, it's very complicated chemistry and biochemistry. And then the thought I just had to make that statement required a neurotransmitter, which is a very simple, small chemical molecule. And so in our brain we have billions of synapses, and they're controlled by neurotransmitters. Maybe you might get 50 neurotransmitters per synapse. So you can analyze it all at a chemistry level.
What I was trying to get at is that everything is geometry. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I'd say if you say between...
Sitting together in a certain way, which
Yeah.
is creating a behavior, right?
Yeah, that's true. But some of it is really hard to explain. Like, for example, what does a quark do? And electrons, why do they pair up? They should be repelling. So a bond is typically a paired set of electrons that have opposite spins. And then there's something called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which I did mention in that article. And it says, if you try to measure where an electron is, it's already gone. So why are you trying to measure it? It's not a particle, it's a wave. So you're into the areas of philosophy almost. I mean, when you're talking about these subparticles, it's just absolutely fascinating. And then when you get onto things like entropy, so a lot of chemical reactions, they require some entropy, which is disorder. And so life has been defined as something which decreases its entropy at the expense of its surroundings, which is just the coolest expression you could ever imagine. So what we're doing, we're breathing in all sorts of stuff, ingesting complex polysaccharides, breaking them down, and then building up our own bodies. So we produce order from chaos, which means we're decreasing our entropy. So we're into philosophy. I can see geometry. I can see what you're saying, because we are geometric as well. We are a certain shape. We have symmetry. Most humans have symmetry anyway. And so, anyway.
Full of tweets.
Yep.
But can we, because of time, can we do one slide on Requis and then do Q&A? Because this has been a pretty broad.
It's been a broad one so far. If I just quickly run through the Requis
I was
story.
saying that as a positive.
Yeah,
there's a lot
it's
to
taken
talk about
time.
here.
It's taken time, and I know time's going by. We started at 9:20, so if I could have 5 minutes on Requis, that'd be cool. And so, so sleep is like the new sex. You know, everybody wants it, nobody's getting it because. And it is actually an epidemic. You know, people used to sleep 9 hours a night. Now, they're lucky if they get 6 or 7, and it has physical consequences. So, and we believe it can make it into a money machine. So the point of this slide is that, you know, the train crash in New York, someone hit an SUV, and that train line has terrible safety record. Well, there's another accident, December 2013, where the driver had insomnia, and he fell asleep, and he crashed his train into all sorts of things, and there was another incident. So it's horrible. And, you know, if you have an emergency medical team, you want them to have slept. If they're starting to cut you up, you know, you want them to have slept. And it's not a minor thing. It's something really important. The Centers for Disease Control have described it as an epidemic, and I thoroughly believe that. And so we have a solution, and I won't go into the vision. We have a team. Nigel Smart, he's sick at the moment, but he would have been here. We've got Marie, this great team, and you can see it on the company website, which is requispharm.com. It's there. And we have great advisors. Some are local, most are local. Mark Scheidler's down in Washington. And so there's an enormous market for sleep aids. Basically, this was 23 billion, and it's grown to 31 in 2012, which is a compound growth rate. So all the sleep labs, all the mattresses that they sell on TV, the sleep number beds, everybody wants to sleep better. And yep. So one thing we found out was snoring is a really serious disorder. It affects the quality of life for the bed partner. It also affects just all sorts of things in your life. In fact, it can cause atherosclerosis in the carotid artery. The vibration of the snoring can cause all sorts of damage to your carotid artery. It's not just a harmless thing that goes on. So our drug, so what we invented in June 2011 is a combination of tryptophan, which is a precursor of serotonin. It's a universal feel-good neurotransmitter. Sedating antihistamine, which is doxylamine in our case, and melatonin. And that combination has some really excellent effects. And so we want to come up with a pill that will help people. It's not for serious insomnia, but it's for occasional sleeplessness. But it also, you know, we tested it. We evaluated it in human volunteers. So this was our business development director, who a couple of years ago, he went on a vacation to Malaysia. He took the drug just to help him with sleeping on a cruise ship. And his wife, who was in clinical trials with Glaxo at the time, said, "You stopped snoring." And that was revolutionary. So it's about making your own luck and observing that that was an invention. And so what we've filed new patents. We've tested. The compounding pharmacist has manufactured the material. There's been a prescription written by a physician. And this is separate from the company, that transaction. But we've tested it in people, even as far away as Atlanta, with dramatic effects in snoring. And this is only anecdotal, but it's very dramatic. So the components are safe. You know, when formulated, it does treat occasional sleeplessness, snoring. There is no drug for snoring at the moment. So we're currently reimagining the business plan because we've had a discussion with the FDA, and you've got to work with the FDA, and they gave us some great input. So we're making a new plan which will be available quite soon. We're just costing up the rest of the process, you know. So we were originally thinking about an over-the-counter drug. The FDA is saying, I think it should be a prescription drug. Perhaps later we could do a switch from RX to OTC. So Requisom, our vision is to have a unique new drug, have it made around this area. And because we had the observation of snoring, we filed a new patent application, March 2013. That came out. It's on the website. And it'll just be a great new market for this sleep aid. And we're talking to investors and potential licensees as well. So nearly there. That's the competition. There's competition of devices, you know. So people will sell you things like sort of guards that go in your mouth, or other things. And some of them are effective. I'm not writing them off. but there's no drug treatment. So if we're talking about a serious snorer who wants to break the habit, 6 packs a year through the physician, let's say it's $20 a pack, which is just an estimate. We have a costing expert here in the audience. So you could easily say that the market in the US alone is $12 billion a year, which is as big as any prescription drug. So it's potentially huge. So it has a lot of positives. And this is the sort of thing I show investors about exit strategies. So we're aware, we have a lot of experience of startup companies in the company, and we're aware that at some point you've got to exit and cash. The investors have got to cash in. So this is what we have in the company. A product that addresses a $1 billion market. We have a great team. There is no approved drug for snoring. We have an IP portfolio, and that's really necessary. You do need it in the industry. We have 7 patents. I think 3 or 4 of them are out in the public domain now. I think there's 3 out in the public domain, but there's others pending. We're doing prosecutions of the patents with the USPTO. We have a de-risk strategy. So the de-risked part is saying, look, these drugs have been around. Doxylamine has been around since 1948. It's been generally recognized as safe. And then tryptophan and melatonin are in human breast milk, believe it or not. They're called natural chronobiotic substances. So they're helping children to get into good sleep patterns. So these, we believe, are safe. And hopefully we'll prove that in studies. And we believe that investors who come in will have a major dividend in year 4. I just need to put the disclaimer up there. This is what, the lawyers tell you, that you're telling them all this stuff, and so I must note the disclaimer because they're statements about the future which may not become real and blah blah blah. So, and it's true because I can say this might work, but it may not work for whatever reason. So, we're talking about the human body. So, and that's us.
All right, thank
Good.
you.
Okay.
I know we got started late. If you have to leave, just head out. We'll hopefully see you soon. We'll do a little Q&A, but it'll be shorter than normal. I'll say 5, but then you're free to stay and answer questions. I think that was really awesome. I'm so glad that my orientation around life sciences is different now. We have to have more, and I didn't realize, how much innovation there could be, or who's doing what. It's as heady as technology innovation with a 4-year projected return. You're talking like technology startups.
Yeah.
So I probably have 10 questions in my head, but.
Okay, any questions?
You're new. I'm David. Sorry, I'm going to go with a new face. House rules, name, who you are, question.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay, so I'm Vicky Aharoni.
No, you.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm Vicky Aharoni. I'm visiting here, but basically I have a quick question for the life cycle of getting it to market. So because it's naturally occurring chemicals, does it take the 7 to 10 years that it'll take a normal drug to get on the market still? To get FDA approval?
Yeah, there are those 2 naturally occurring chemicals. They're just they're in foods. But there's doxylamine. And doxylamine has been around for a long time, but it's generally recognized as safe. So the FDA wants to check it is really safe. You can buy it. You go to Rite Aid and you can buy doxylamine in Unisol or something like that. So it's a drug combination with these natural substances, and because it's a combination, it could be different. And the reason for that is that even grapefruit juice will block liver enzymes, and the liver enzymes are the ones that metabolize the drugs and take them away out of the body. So you've got to be very careful. That's what the FDA is for.
David?
Yeah, David Tropko. No Lars. Question for you.
Yeah.
You seem like someone who wants to help the general populace. And typically when I think of an FDA-sponsored drug that is going to be an RX drug, I think of something that's more expensive, that has other complications, so that's why you're taking it in that way. Why would the FDA push something like this to be an RX versus an OTC, where it seems like as an OTC you'd be able to go faster out to a broader populace, that everyone would get the benefit of this particular product?
That's a very good question. So this came out of a discussion with the FDA, which it's probably confidential at the moment, but the basic message was that OTC drugs are for self-diagnosed disorders. So if you have a pain in your leg, you go and get some ibuprofen, or got a headache, you take acetaminophen, whatever. And there are lots of drugs that if you've got a cold, you know what to take. And the concern was that snoring may be covering another serious disorder, which is obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea takes a bit of diagnosis. You have to go to a sleep lab. They probably have to do an ECG. They can record the way you're breathing at night. That's another way of diagnosing it. So it means that you could be trying to treat something which is actually quite serious. So, and so I understand.
But 90% of about 90% of the money that's spent right now for marketing in the pharmaceutical area is actually spent trying to persuade a doctor to give a script for a particular product.
Yeah.
So if you walk into a doctor's office and you say, I'm snoring, my wife is giving me problems because we can't sleep together at this point, the guy's going to say, here, take this. He's not going to have you go through the regimen you just talked about. He's going to self-diagnose almost instantly for you at this point.
Well, he'll ask you about your sleep habits, and he could, even by asking those questions, exclude obstructive sleep apnea. And because with obstructive sleep apnea, you normally wake up sweating and stressy because you've been, your body is reacting to this almost suffocation during the night. And there are certain patients that have it very clearly. So yeah, he could do it with a questionnaire. You can also, I had a friend who was diagnosed, and all they did, there was a American Thoracic Society has sent him a tape recorder. And then he tape recorded himself for 3 nights sleep. They sent it back, and then they said, yeah, this is what you need to do. So I'm not minimizing it. I mean, we are now speaking to a major sleep lab in Philadelphia, and about how to do a phase 2 clinical trial. And we may do ECG during that. So that's recording the brain during sleep. And you can see then whether people are waking up with some sort of shock reaction to not breathing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Kyle.
Kyle Hudson, 23 North Digital. I did notice in that chart that you had about the prescriptions coming out per year, that it kind of didn't follow what you'd expect. When the recession hit, it went up. And I was thinking that maybe it had something to do with them lifting the ban on stem cell research. Did that skew the data or anything like that?
So stem cells, I'm not aware of any stem cell drugs that actually have made it onto the market yet. There's lots of biological drugs like antibodies which have made it onto the market. So antibody research, the second column there was it was the antibodies, and there are lots of therapeutic antibodies out there which are really powerful things. I mean, I'm really into small molecule drugs, so that was the main message of that scale. But
well, then why did you think it went up when the recession hit?
well, typically what happens during the recession is that people buy pharmaceutical stocks because everybody needs drugs. In fact, they probably need more drugs during the recessions. So the pharmaceutical stocks would then rise. They'd have more money to develop things which maybe they've put on the shelf for a while through lack of money. Because it can cost easily $1 billion to develop a drug because of the phase 1, all the trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then phase 4 as well, which is post-market surveillance. So it's just a very expensive business.
Christine, she left. Last night I read an article in the New York Times about venture capital and energy, funding energy startups, and how the model is broken, and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory is trying to solve that. Can you give us a forecast for what's going to facilitate innovation in pharma, and can we expect more? Is it getting better?
Yeah.
Or is there serious intervention needed?
So biotech companies are doing really cool things. They're talking about delivering DNA into the brain and curing diseases by actually packing DNA into viruses and forcing it into the brain, and then the DNA just has a life of its own and cures disease. I mean, it's amazing what's going on. All sorts of deliveries, like intranasal delivery of drugs, which is a much quicker way of getting drugs into the brain, for example. Nanotechnology, so drugs which previously wouldn't get to the site of action, just put them in these tiny nanocapsules and then ship them into the site of action. It's just some great stuff going on. And you can even build on the edge of these nanocapsules something which attracts them to the place where they should be. So there's great innovation going on. One thing that's happening in the industry is research on rare disease, which is wonderful because lots of people got rare diseases. And previously, companies like Bristol Myers Squibb, unless you could make a convincing argument that the drug would sell $500 billion a year, they just weren't interested. But now companies are looking at rare diseases because once you've got an approval for a drug, you can use it for all sorts of other things, other clinical trials. So that's a really positive thing that's happening in the industry. So there is great innovation going on. The big pharmas are learning, and when biotechs come up with something, then there's often a bidding war. Pfizer, GSK, Novartis will be bidding for these assets, and then they can develop them. So they're farming out the research to biotechs, who can be bolder.
I don't know if this is necessarily biotech, but we went on a field trip to NextFab. Are you familiar with them? So it's like micro manufacturing, but mega machines, and you could do really innovative stuff. And we met somebody who's building a printer, a 3D printer that could print biological material, like noses and ears, or the medium on which that happens. And to make it even more confounding, she said, "Oh, look in there, you see that printer? We built that with another 3D printer, and it happens to print." Like, what happens in my brain when I try to wrap my head around that? It's not pretty, but what's compelling is that it's now in the hands of people.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So is it going to get to the point where, kind of like technology, kids in dorm rooms, people on the weekend working at night, the innovation is really coming up, and it's going to be big companies chasing, like, can they hang on to that innovation, or will they ever own it?
And I just think that's what's fantastic about the US, is that people have the boldness to do it. There's lots of countries where, when Novo Nordisk moved to a new site, the local council said, "You're not doing any gene splicing here because we don't like it," and so there were lots of restrictions already. It was a beautiful building built by fantastic architects, but they couldn't do certain things because people were frightened of it. And I just think the US has all this freedom, and everybody wants biotech. West Virginia wants biotech, Florida wants biotech, everybody wants biotech, and a lot of this stuff is just amazingly innovative, as you're saying. 3D printing of organs, it's just unbelievable.
All right, one more question, and then you're free to stay and ask lots of other questions if Lars has time. Any other questions?
Yep.
Ben?
You alluded to some kind of disenfranchised creators or people who are quite possibly innovators in the field, and there's a trend of operating within a large organizational hierarchy that doesn't promote these innovations. So how would you appeal to all these different people, or how do they aggregate and start stuff that is revolutionary?
What's really good about the biotech hubs, say Boston, San Diego, San Francisco, is that they have lots of this informal contact going on. So they have groups where people can just get together after work and talk about the crazy stuff that they want to do, and it's a way of so the people who feel in a straitjacket at work, they can go and express themselves outside of work, and that's the way new companies get started. And I really believe in that model, and that's what the US is so great at. That's where Silicon Valley is so great at it. But it's tough, because some of the people who might have all these innovative ideas, they have 4 kids who need to go through college, they have a mortgage, maybe a partner who says, "Look, I don't want you taking any risks. We rely on this salary." But one thing that's changed is that big pharma is no longer a job for life. It used to be when I first joined it. It used to be a job for life. You could be there 35 years easily and collect your pension. They still do some quite cool stuff. So yeah, it's hard. But those with a true entrepreneurial spirit, you've got to not be frightened of being in a small company where there's insecurity. And one of the things I mentioned in that article, those small companies are incredibly motivational. So let's say you have a company of 100 people, and something great happens in the lab. So the invention gets recognized, and it goes around the company in no time. And it's the companies that are successful now, and I've seen it at Gilead. I did something like this talk there, and the CEO would just be talking to individual project leaders. John Martin was speaking to individual project leaders and getting excited about their data, instead of instead of arguing with them and saying this is a waste of time. You know? So there are some companies that really somehow have managed it, and those are the companies we need to learn from. You know? So,
Can Philly be one of those hubs? You left it out. Was
yeah,
that on purpose?
Philly can, because there are so many people who have left the industry who are looking to do things. So there is an innovation up at, you go up to Eagleview, there's a Hankin incubator, where a friend of mine from Cephalon is starting new companies. There are new companies starting around here. Ours is virtual, you know, but we may get a space at some point, because it's good to have people meeting in one place, you know. So there's lots happening around here. I just say the money seems to be around Boston, San Diego, and San Francisco.
Well, if it was born here, it should come back here.
Yes, exactly. No, I agree with you.
Walnut Street Labs.
No,
It's got the labs. It could be either way.
It's different type of money.
We get people looking for chemistry.
Different type of money.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you.
It's a great question, though.
Okay.
And I think Philly can do it. You know.
Westchester.
Westchester.
All right, thanks a lot, Lars. So feel free to hang out. We'll have some music. We'll drink some coffee.